Lord Patel, a wonderful guy that I have met once before and who has got some really insightful things to say. So thank you very much.
Great, I'll try and stick to the 15 minutes very quickly and fly through stuff. Firstly, thank you for welcoming us here. We came yesterday when the sun was shining and it was fantastic. and then we woke up this morning. But it's really nice to see Barbara again and meet Phil today and other people. And I think even from the very short time of being here, just in the room, there's that feeling of some cultural change and some togetherness, and that really matters because, you know, the place is on fire everywhere and it's really difficult. I loved your first bit about sort of patience. When I used to chair a hospital trust, the first thing we ever did, because I assume you hold your board meetings in public, we used to have members of the public there, we used to have a patient story that began every board meeting. And it wasn't about discussing anything, it was just the patient coming in saying, this happened to me, it was great, or this happened to me and it was horrible. And it was just to remind the board, when we went in to look at objectives and safety and quality and 4-hour waiting time, actually why we're there. And it always worked, and it was a real interesting thing. Breaking barriers. So I'll explain why we got in breaking barriers, but sort of just to set the scene. Look, big 4 global challenges for all of us. Nothing new. In 50 years' time, we're going to have the whole population of London, 8.6 million people, are going to be over the age of 65. Big issue in Cornwall, going to happen earlier. It's only 10 years' time, a third of your population is going to be over this age. Big issues. However, if you look at housing, only 1% of housing development actually caters for older occupants. We're not thinking about it. Technology, well, we're all living longer, 20 years longer on average. If you live in a lovely area, you'll have 20 years longer, great. If you live in a poor area, you'll live 20 years longer and you'll be poorly. And that's, technology has been contributing to us living longer, but it also, for every new major technology, you add £10 billion to the NHS budget, which hasn't been there. But we need to rapidly change. If you've heard Matt Hancock pushing this agenda in a big way, and we're a long way away. I took my hospital to become a paperless organisation, and it took us 2 years. And it wasn't the concept of the technology, it was culture and attitude. I signed this and I put it in that tray. Yeah, but you don't have to anymore. No, but I signed this and I put it in that tray. That's what. So I think, there's some fantastic technology. We don't use it. Sensors in homes, and I think somewhere like the geographical spread of Cornwall could really do some fantastic work using technology. We've seen it in Rwanda. We've seen it in India, where we can capitalise on that. We still have 9,000 fax machines in the NHS. We're going to ban them by 2020 March. We still have 9,000, and I think the pages are on their way out. Skills, big issue, costs us £6 billion a year at the moment because we're not getting this skills workforce right. In 10 years' time, we're going to be 250,000 people short. If the immigration white paper's wrong, it could be 350,000 skilled people short. An issue we should keep coming back to in terms of workforce. And of course, growing health inequalities. Though we're living longer, it's in London, several tube stops away where you lose 10 years of your life, north-south divide. People living in the most poor housing, most disadvantaged, damp conditions, kids who haven't got areas to play, clearly that's going to have a big impact. So in terms of the breaking barriers thing, if you look at sort of some of the challenges, and these are some of the global challenges, local government finance in the last 10 years, we call this a graph of doom. But even if you just look at, that's just children and adult services, where the cut-off point is in terms of how much money we're going to lose there. And it's across the board. If you look at, we've talked about the ageing society, quarter of the population by 2046 going to be over 65. What does that mean in terms of dementia? Development for new illnesses. Now, this one looks at recorded crime, rising. A better one from me, I think when I was a probation officer 30 odd years ago, we had 146 adult prisons with a population of 42,500. We still have 146 adult prisons and we have a population of 88,000. We look at more people than anywhere in Europe. You know, by government's own figures, 12% of them shouldn't be in a prison cell. They should be in a psychiatric ward because they've got serious psychiatric problems. You know, 3/4 have got drug use problems. You know, 80% got mental health, reading ranges of 8 to 9. Major issue. These people come back to society and there's no continuity of care. There's no education, employment, families. 20% workforce gone. Housing, you don't need me to tell you in terms of not just the number of houses, but the type and the quality and what housing means to health. We've known since the 18th century there's a massive correlation between the environment in your house and health, but we don't seem to do a lot about it. Our latest report has been focusing on that and has had some really good benefits. Delayed transfers of care. You must have this. We had it where I was. Pressures on GPs, A&E open, you know, you go there, complex care. CQC's just shut 15 residential care homes down. You know, you stick the person in a bed, you cancel the operation for the other person, you can't get a package to get out. Growing across the country. Big issue. Skills, mentioned it before, 250,000, but it's different skills for me. It's not just about, when we talk about health and social care, not just about care workers or nurses or doctors. You know, we know for the people who are at the centre of things, probably 7 professions will go into somebody's house. Somebody will be talking about the kids aren't going to school. You know, you've got a problem with your physical structures. You've got an elderly relative. But can we not have some multidisciplinary working? Can we not create a workforce, a housing worker who can spot some health issues and vice versa? And I think it's a different workforce we're looking for that we need to develop and give opportunities. So that red blob is not Texas, it's West Yorkshire, where I come from, fairly obvious. And, you know, we've thought about integration, we've thought about bringing things together, but if you just look at West Yorkshire, you know, the different sector organisations, not a lack of money, you know, £12 billion, 179,000 people working in it, in 1,100 organisations, plus the voluntary sector, which is wide and varied, and we can't get figures for it. So there's lots of complexity. So integration isn't straightforward. And it was interesting looking at the map of Cornwall. So this is Bradford, where I live. 534,000 people population. It's a 50th of the size of Cornwall in terms of geographical space. Population very similar. But look what we have there. We had 3 foundation trusts, you know, an ambulance service, 3 clinical commissioning groups, 59 GP practices, you know, a local government on its knees in terms of social care, in terms of budgets, really struggling, and a spectrum of voluntary care services that come and go and compete. That's complicated to work with, to get people around the table who are looking at their own sovereignty, who are looking at their own things. So, you know, I did something what I thought was very simple. I brought the local authorities, schools, academies, the 2 colleges, the university, the 3 trusts, and a few others around the table to say, can we use our apprenticeship levy better? Can we work together? Can we begin looking at health and care workforce from 14? There's enough for everybody in terms of the colleges, in terms of the universities, in terms of career pathway. Instead of, in my hospital there, employing 145 Filipino nurses every year because we couldn't get them from anywhere else, when I had hundreds of local people who were unemployed who could have fitted that bill. But we never worked together because it was my budget. And I think breaking away from that to actually, you know, form a group to do that is quite crucial. And it was that frustration that got me involved with doing breaking barriers. I was just so frustrated in terms of seeing what's wrong. So I don't know if people remember Hazel Blair's, but Hazel Blair's a colleague of mine, and we just wrote it all down. You know, for example, my hospital, again, 60 acres of old Victorian building. Not fit for purpose. You kept building new bits on it. Instead of actually, you know, working in the community. So, you know, we planned, the 3 foundation trusts took 18 months to work on one thing together, diabetes care, which was nice. We all worked together and we saved a bit of money. But we forgot the fact that 30% of the 10-year-olds in the city centre of Bradford were either obese or overweight. And we spent no money on that. So it was always at the back end. So we looked at how we could develop little health and wellbeing centres in the communities, shut down parts of the hospital. This was not growing the empire of the hospital, but it was actually getting out there. We looked at workforce development and a load of ideas there. And when we wrote this report, and it sort of, we had some big recommendations. This was way back in 2016. We thought there shouldn't be a Department of Communities and Local Government and a Department of Health. It should be joined together. We got halfway there. They changed the name. It didn't quite, you know, but that wasn't bad. But the other things that we looked at in 2016, workforce development, new technologies, prevention, are all the things Matt decided he wanted to do. You know, so that generated a lot of interest. And because of all the other things I've showed you about the pressures, we were asked to do a piece of work on the criminal justice system in the Greater Manchester Authority, looking at devolution, where they joined up. So it wasn't just about prisoners, it was about how can we prevent them coming in, what's the education, training needs, what's the housing afterwards. So we developed a number of these, working with a number of areas across the country, and have learned lots of things. The last one was fascinating. So we almost was siloed a little bit in ourselves. We looked at criminal justice, though we were joining up the dots. We looked at education and employment in sort of Sunderland, you know, joining up the dots. We looked at housing and infrastructure. We looked at health and social care. It was when a clinical commissioning group rang us up and said, can you come and work with us? And we said, great, what on? Housing. That was the big breakthrough. And from that piece of work, and the report's available, I'm sure we got it, the Holmes report, we developed a process in terms of looking at housing and health. Yours, that's it, similar population, but, you know, huge amount bigger. A manageable system, you know, less complex. I think that's got to be a big plus. You know, bringing all the people together, you could do that really well here. You've begun the partnership work, and I think it's now taking that to the next level and maybe making them warm words into real concrete actions and producing some new models that government is desperate to have. And the volunteer base is incredible. So I've spent a lifetime working with, and I've worked in the voluntary sector. I set up the first mother and baby drug rehab. I set up one of the first daycare facilities for women with mental health problems, or a social worker by profession, and, you know, worked in academia. But on the back of, you know, I learned everything from people who I served. So, you know, making policy now or legislation is what people taught me. You know, in terms of what do you want, what matters to you. I think that was really important. That was quite crucial. So I think you've got some really big strengths. You've got phenomenal challenges as well. I mean, that, you know, that population growth needs to be thought about now. Rurality, you know, big issue, using technology, and the workforce. How can we develop a brand new workforce here where, even if it's a health and social care academy, we're thinking about all the other talents you need to run a hospital. Tech, you know, high quality digital technology, high quality estates people. You know, there's a huge amount of careers in this, and growing that workforce in, keeping them here and not letting them go elsewhere. And I think if you can, you know, our job is to help people very sharp to come in, to do some horizon scanning, to know what government policy is thinking about, come up with. We work with industry as well. Now, I've never done that before. My whole life's been about public sector working. Some of the industries we're working with are phenomenal. They're big, multi-billion-pound organisations, but they want to learn. And they do have technologies that we can learn from and share. And they do have a passion for delivering good quality services. So I'm not going to go through this. This is a range of ideas that we've learnt over the years, but the housing and health one helped us develop something called the playbook. And it's a very sort of methodical way of going through things. So, you know, we have lots and lots of strategies, and you'll have lots of strategies. We sit down with a group of people and say, what's the key thing that you need to do? Not develop another strategy, develop an action plan to deliver it. But we have an agreement on that, we look at it, we develop it. We know there's lots of barriers. We agree what's going to happen. Secondly, most importantly, is you don't develop that strategy in here and then tell people what it's about. You work with the residents, with the users, with the patients, with the community, with the voluntary sector, and you co-design that. Skills, competence and workforce, again, lots of different models about. We've learnt across the world about how we can bring that here and improve your workforce flow. And then eventually create a service transformation, create something that's absolutely unique here in Cornwall that you can share with the rest of the world. And ultimately, we devise an action plan within 6 months of working with you that's co-designed with service users, that has a huge element of workforce skills planning, innovation and learning from others, including industry. It's got to be affordable, it's got to be sustainable, and we create a governance route map so there is no, the risk is shared because you're all agreeing the direction of travel, and it matters and changes for people. I think that's about it, 15 minutes otherwise.